ሰላም ጤና ይስጥልኝ ተመልካቾቻችን፣ ሰለሞን ሙልጌታ ካሳ ነኝ። ሳምንታዩ ቴክቶክ ሶልመን በኢቢኤስ ተጀምሯል። ለዛሬ ይዤላችሁ የምቀርበው ወጣት የቴክኖሎጂ ባለሙያ እንግዳ ነው። ከሱ ጋራ የማደርገውን ቆይታ እንድትከታተሉ ጋብዛችኋለሁ። ስሙ ሚካኤል ሲሳይ መንግስቱ ይባላል። ተወልዶ ያደገው በዚሁ በአሜሪካን ሀገር ሲሆን ኦሬገን በሚባለው ግዛት ውስጥ በምትገኘው የፓርትላንድ ከተማ ነው። ሁለቱም ወላጆቹ እንግዲህ ቀደም ሲል ወደዚህ ሀገር ተሰደው የሚኖሩ ከነሱ ወላጆች የተወለደ ነው። ትምህርቱን የተከታተለውም በዚሁ ነው። ከአንደኛ ክፍል ጀምሮ እስከ ሃይ ስኩል ከፍተኛ ትምህርቱንም የተማረው በታዋቂ በሆነው የቴክኖሎጂ ዩኒቨርሲቲ በተለይ በቴክኖሎጂ ዙሪያ የMassachusetts ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ቴክኖሎጂ በዚያ ትምህርቱን ተከታትሎ የመጀመሪያ ዲግሪውን በሳይንስ በኤሌክትሪካል ኢንጂነሪንግ እና በኮምፒውተር ሳይንስ ተቀብሏል በከፍተኛ ውጤት። በአሁን ሰዓት በሲያትል ከተማ ውስጥ የሚኖረው ማይክል ለማይክሮሶፍት ኩባንያ በሶፍትዌር ኢንጂነርነት እያገለገለ ይገኛል። ከዚህ በተጨማሪ ማይክል እዚህ ሀገር ተወልዶ ቢያድግም ዋናው እንግዳይም እንዲሆን ያሰብኩበት ምክንያት ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ ላሉት እኩያ ወጣት ወንድሞቹ ከፍተኛ የሆነ ልብ አለው ሸክም አለውና በዚህ የተነሳ ኢትዮጵያ እየሄደ የኮምፒውተር ኮዲንግ ፕሮግራም እንዴት እንደሚጻፍ ለማስተማር እንቅስቃሴ ጀምረዋል። AddisCoder የሚባል ኢኒሺዬቲቭ አለ። እንዲሁም እንግዳይ ዶክተር ጀላኒ የሚባል ከዚህ በፊት የሃርቫርድ ፕሮፌሰር አቅርቤላችሁ ነበር። እሱ የሚመራው ኢኒሺዬቲቭ ነው። በዛ ውስጥ በመታቀፍ ሄዶ ይሄንን እንግዲህ የኮምፒውተር ፕሮግራሚንግ በተለይ ደግሞ የአልጎሪትም እሱን እያስተማረ ነበረ። ተመልሶ መጥቷል። እንደገና በሚቀጥለው ዓመትም እንግዲህ ሄዶ ይሄንኑ ነገር ለወጣት ወንድሞቹ በኢትዮጵያ በአዲስ አበባ ለማስተማር እቅዱ አለው። ስለሱም ያጫውተናል። እንግዲህ ማይክል ፈቃደኛ ሆነ እዚህ ድረስ ለመጫወት ፈቃደኛ ስለሆንክ አመሰግናለሁ። አንድ ነገር ልንገራችሁ ወደ ንግግራችን ከመሄዳችን በፊት። እንዳልኳችሁ ማይክል እዚህ ተወልዶ ስላደገ አማርኛ መስማት ነው እንጂ መናገር በጣም ያስቸግረዋል። ስለዚህ በጣም ትንንሽ አማርኛ ሊናገር ይችላል። በተረፈ ግን ኦልሞስት እንዳለ እሱ መልሱ እኔ በአማርኛ ልጠይቀው እችላለሁ። እሱ ግን መልሱን ያው በእንግሊዝኛ ይመልስልን። እንደምንከታተለው በጽሞና ተስፋ አደርጋለሁ። ታንክ ዩ ማይክል።
ታንክ ዩ
አመሰግናለሁ አትሉን?
እሺ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ።
ኦኬ እስቲ ወደ life ወደ professional life and academic life ከመግባታችን በፊት let's talk about your childhood and how you grew up here. So as an Ethiopian, as an immigrant, right? So what was your childhood like? እንዴት ነበር ልጅነትህ የነበረው?
So my childhood was very average in a lot of ways. I was born in Portland, Oregon, like you said. But one thing was, it was just sort of me and my sister and my two parents. And for us, family was such a very big part of our life, like just as a part of Ethiopian culture. But seeing as how my parents immigrated to the U.S., it was just us. So there are all these family members that we've heard about and talked to on the phone, but we can't exactly put faces to the names because we've lived our whole lives in the U.S. But I mean, really apart from that, on the outside, we lived very sort of average lives, like playing baseball and basketball and soccer and going to neighborhood schools and such. But there was always sort of an underlying sort of missing aspect of our lives being in the U.S. and away from our extended family in Ethiopia.
No, that's great. Yeah, that's what every immigrant is feeling about, right? So why did you decide to study computer science? እንግዲህ ተመልካቾቻችን ማወቅ የሚፈልጉት ይሄን ነው። ብዙ ጊዜ ሶፍትዌር መማር የሚፈልጉ ሰዎች ይሄን ማወቅ ይፈልጋሉና what was the motivation or your drive to pursue science, specifically electrical engineering and computer science? And then the other question is እንዴት አድርገህ ነው MIT ውስጥ የገባኸው? ከባድ ነው እዛ ለመግባት? ጥሩ ትምህርት ቤት ነውና እንዴት ነው ይሄን እስቲ ንገረን።
Okay. So one thing about computer science in our household was my dad was a programmer. So I had always sort of been exposed to the idea of computer programming and computer science. He was always reading these huge programming books and always like working on the computer, and I would ask him about his work. And I remember very vividly the first day that he showed me how to sort of make a website with HTML, because that was something I'd kind of been interested in. And he just sat down with me and he showed me how I could take photos from my camera and upload them to the computer and make my own website and just like embed these photos that I've just taken onto like my own website. And for me, that was sort of incredible.
ስንት ዓመት ነበረ when you did that?
Oh, I must have been in like 8th grade. So
okay.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, and it was really interesting just to have that resource. But one other thing though that I really appreciated was it was present in our lives, But my dad never really forced it upon me. He was never like, you should be a computer programmer. He was just sort of showing me its power and really sort of the interesting aspects of it. And for that, after that, I was really kind of hooked. Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's wonderful. So how did you get into MIT?
So there's no real formula for getting into any sort of school. But for me, one thing that I've sort of figured out, I guess, is that the best way to sort of get into like these really good schools is not so much to sort of tailor like an application to getting into these schools or doing things that you think will get you into these schools. It's more just following a passion really, really strongly. So like for me, I was really into programming, and to really learn programming, what I did was I went online to the MIT OpenCourseWare, and that is basically a huge resource filled with free classes and
That's completely free for anyone?
Absolutely.
Okay, if you can provide the link, we will put it on the screen so that people can do the same thing.
Oh, yeah,
Computer
absolutely.
program መማር የሚፈልጉ ተመልካቾቻችን.
Yeah, so I remember being in like 11th or 12th grade, like in class, like with my laptop while people were working on like classwork, working on like programming assignments, like just for fun. And like I did like internships at Portland State University learning how to program. And I don't know this for certain, but I'm sure that reflected very positively in my application, just showing that I was doing these sort of things just out of passion, really. It was just sort of a hobby for me, something that I thought was really interesting. It's really like the power and scale of programming that kind of drew me to it. And just the fact that there are all these free resources online, like the MIT OpenCourseWare, that was really my first exposure to MIT as well. And so being able to have that resource in which I could find free courses and learn how to program is really what drew me to MIT as well. So it was sort of kind of a two birds with one stone. I was able to learn beforehand, but also be exposed to MIT, and that's sort of what drove my application.
That's wonderful. So tell us about your ትምህርት እዛ የተማርከውን የመጀመሪያ ዲግሪህን ስታገኝ እንዴት ነበረ? ውጤትህ ፉክክርህም እንዴት ነበር የጨረስከው?
So MIT is a very interesting place. It is, while you're in it, there's a saying that it feels like you're drinking from a fire hose. And that's just sort of meant to represent that there's so much information coming your way and so many things to do. It's really hard to sort of take it all in. But looking back, it was really probably like the best thing that had ever happened to me. It was such an incredible experience. There's just so many resources and opportunities there that you wish there were more hours in the day. You wish like you didn't have to sleep or eat just because there's so many things that you want to do and so many really, really incredible people that inspire you every day to do amazing things.
Wonderful. በስንት ነጥብ ነበር የጨረስከው? What was your GPA when you finished MIT?
GPAs aren't really
It's not important, I know, but
mean,
you know, it kind of reflects how you did well, I think, right?
Yeah, I mean, so our GPAs are out of 5, so I have 4.5 when I graduated.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So let's talk about your professional life, right? ከዛ ተመረቀህ internship ብዙ ቦታ ሰርተሃል ግን አሁን በቋሚነት የምትሰራው ማይክሮሶፍት ነው አይደለም? So እንዴት ነው? How's work at Microsoft? እስቲ ስለሱ አጫውተንና ከዚህም ጋር in relation to that, you know, as an MIT graduate, you could have, you know, chosen many other options, right? Maybe, I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud, like Google's or the Facebook or Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Why, if you chose Microsoft, why you chose that in-house work at Microsoft? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So one really great thing about MIT is that there's so many resources, and one of those things are really how they reach out to companies and how companies come to MIT to do recruiting. So virtually every tech company that you could even think of comes to the career fair and comes to the campus at some point to do recruiting. And so you really know about all these different opportunities. And for me, I actually did an internship with Microsoft last summer. And so I really got a good experience there. I was able to learn a lot. The team that I work on is the ASP.NET Core team. And that is, they work on a web framework, and it's open source and cross-platform. And one really big thing for me was I learned so much that summer. And in addition to that, I felt that there was still a lot more left to learn if I were to come back. So that was a really big driving factor. But probably the most important thing was I really enjoyed working with those teammates. And that's a really big thing with starting a new job, especially in tech, is that the culture can vary drastically from company to company. And so getting that internship experience, I was able to really see what it was like there. If I were to just interview somewhere else and just take that job full time, it would be kind of a gamble. You can't really tell what it's like working at a place just from interviews. So the internship really gave me a good experience and a really keen insight onto what it was actually like to work on that team. And I really liked it. And another big thing is that it's in Seattle, which is pretty close to home. It's a 3-hour drive from Portland.
To your parents?
Exactly.
Okay, that's another reason. Okay, so what are, I mean, you mentioned some of the projects that you do there, ASP.NET, which I used to code on when I was a software engineer before joining the consulting world. So what kind of projects did you do while at Microsoft or during your internship or personally? So any projects that you have done from the scratch maybe or enhanced?
Yeah, so throughout my time at school, I participated in a lot of different internships and research projects. So like starting from like my freshman summer, I was part of an undergraduate research opportunity, or UROP is what they're called at school. That was through the Space Systems Lab. It was on a project called OSIRIS-RExus. And essentially that project was about sending a payload on a NASA satellite to basically take information about a meteor that was sort of approaching the Earth. And that was a really good experience for me as a freshman. Also, there were other opportunities, like I participated in an Android programming competition, and that really sort of was my first exposure to mobile programming. And that was a really interesting experience because you didn't really need any experience to join that competition. And from that, I was able to really learn a lot, and that made me very marketable when I was applying to other jobs in the future. So like from that, to get different internships, and that really sort of like spurred my career growth, like being able to put that on my resume, being able to like expand those skills. And that was basically mostly self-taught, which is how a lot of programming really is. And so like from there, I was able to get internships in like New York and Seattle at places like GroupMe and Redfin, working on mobile applications. So it was just sort of like one of my friends sort of pushed me to join this programming competition for Android. And from that, like my next 2 jobs were in mobile programming, which kind of just shows how like a small decision can really affect the trajectory of your life as long as you just kind of put effort into it.
ወንደርፉል እንግዲህ ቴንክ ዩ ማይክ። የመጀመሪያው ክፍል ጭውውት ይህን ይመስላል። ስለ ልጅነቱ፣ ስለ ትምህርቱ፣ ስለ ስራው። ከእረፍት በኋላ ስንመለስ ደግሞ ኢትዮጵያ የሚያደርጋቸውን ነገሮች በዚህ ዓመት የሚያደርገውን ካሁን በኋላም በምን መንገድ ሀገሩን እንግዲህ የወላጆቹን ሀገር እሱ እንኳን እዚህ ነው ተወልዶ ያደገው፣ ግን ያው የትውልድ ሀገሩ እዚህ ቢሆንም የወላጆቹን ሀገር መነሻ የሆነውን የኢትዮጵያ ሀገሩን ለማገልገል ምን በውስጡ እንዳነሳሳውና ምን እንደሚያደርግ አብረን እንጫወታለን። ተመልሰን እንገናኛለን። አውራ ተመልካቾቻችን ከረፍት ቆይታ ተመልሰናል። በመጀመሪያ መግቢያ ላይ እንዳልኩት ማይክ እንግዲህ እዚህ ሀገር ተወልዶ ቢያድግም በኢትዮጵያ ሄዶ የሶፍትዌር ኢንጂነር እንደመሆኑ ፕሮግራም እንዴት እንደሚደረግ የኮምፒውተር ፕሮግራሚንግ በዛ ላሉ ወጣት ተማሪዎች ለማስተማር ተሳታፊ ሆኗል። በተለይ በዚህ በ2016 በዚሁ ፕሮጀክት ላይ ሄዶ የአዲስኮደር የሚባል ኢኒሺዬቲቭ አለ። ያንን ደግሞ በዋና መስራትነት ያቋቋመው ዶክተር ጀላኒ እና ሌሎችም ግሩፖች ናቸው። ዶክተር ጀላኒ እንደምታስታውሱት በዚሁ ሾው ላይ እንግዳ ሆኖ ቀርቦ ነበረ። ከዚህ በፊት በነበረ ምዕራፍ ላይ የሃርቫርድ ፕሮፌሰር ሲሆን ግማሽ ኢትዮጵያዊ ግማሽ ጥቁር አሜሪካዊ ነው። እንግዲህ እዛ ግሩፕ ውስጥ ገብቶ ነው በዛ ነገር ሲሳተፍ የቆየው። በዚህ አመት ሄደ ተመልሰሃል። ሶ እስቲ ምን እንዳደረግ what was your main role as a team within AddisCoder, and then what you thought and what you helped back home for the youngsters, and then how the experience was.
Yeah, definitely. So for AddisCoder 2016, I was one of the TAs, and just as like a small background about the program, it was a program designed to teach high schoolers, so primarily like 10th and 11th graders, about algorithms through programming in the language Python. So it started off with like a 2-week introductory course in programming in Python, and then it moved towards using those programming skills to learn about and implement different algorithms. And so as a TA, before actually going to Ethiopia, we sort of set up practice problems and helped kind of design curriculum. And once we got to Ethiopia, we were in lectures, ready to answer questions and helping run these sort of lab scenarios in which the students would work on the pre-assigned labs, and we would go around and basically just kind of answer questions and really just help them with any of these algorithm questions that they had.
So that basically that you were just helping as a teaching assistant, right?
Exactly.
So ምን ይመስልሃል በኢትዮጵያ ላይ ሳይንስና ቴክኖሎጂን ለማሳደግ to promote science and technology in Ethiopia, what did you observe to be the most important thing to do about that back home?
So I think really, especially with programming, it's sort of just you need someone to essentially kind of just point you in the right direction. So like for me, it was really my dad who kind of just showed me that programming was this really interesting thing that you can kind of just learn about on your own. And so I think one thing that would kind of really need to happen is just some sort of like tech mentorship in which you would essentially show the students or whoever was interested where the resources are and sort of how to do it on your own. Like for the example of those students, they were very brilliant students, and we were teaching them like concepts that like I learned in like university or like people like don't learn until like after high school, like pretty complicated things, and they were picking them up, and it was essentially they just needed someone to say, oh, like here are the different opportunities that are out there in tech, and this is like what you should be learning about if you're interested in this stuff, and they can go ahead and do it. But I think really you just need someone to sort of point you in the right direction and show you where the resources are. As long as you have a computer, you can program.
Wonderful. Yeah, ሰምታችሁታል. This is very important thing that he said. ሁልጊዜ የምለው ነው እንግዶችም ጋር ሳወራ በራሴም ሳወራ ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ የጉብዝና ችግር አይደለም ያለው። ማይክ ሲል እንደሰማችሁት እኔ ገና ዩኒቨርሲቲ ውስጥ ገብቼ የምማረውን ከባድ ኮንሰፕቶች የ10ኛ ክፍልና የ11ኛ ክፍል ተማሪዎች አውቀውት ፊገር አውት አድርገውት ሲሰሩ አይቻሉ ነው የሚለው እና ምንድነው ቻሌንጁ ጋይድ የሚያረጋቸው የሚኮተኩታቸው ሰው ነው የሚያስፈልገው ሪሶርስ ነው የሚያስፈልገውና ይሄ በጣም ኢንከሬጅ የሚያደርግም ነው ግን እንደዚህ አይነት ደግሞ ጎበዝ ተማሪዎች ይያሉ በቂ ሪሶርስ አለመኖም ደግሞ ትንሽ የሚያሳዝንም ነው ስለዚህ ሁለቱም ቅልቅል ነውና ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ የጉብዝና ችግር የለም ወጣ ልጆቻችን ሁላቸውም በጣም ጎበዝ ናቸው በብዛት እና ይሄ ነገር መስተካከል አለበት ሪሶርስ አቅርቦት የሚያስፈልገው ነገር መቅረብ አለበት በጣም ደስ የሚል ነገር ነው so along with that just attached a question so in general ምንድነው ያንተ suggestion for ለወጣት ተማሪዎች of course you said mentorship and resources those are the important things but ሌላ በተጨማሪ specifically ኮድ እንዲማሩ በራሳቸው ያስፈልጋቸዋል የምትለው and then after that the more to get into professional career in computer science and electrical engineering what is your suggestion in general what's your advice to youngsters
yeah absolutely so one really important thing with coding is patience because sometimes you can be working on something and you can be staring at it for hours and hours and it can look perfectly fine to you but when you run it you get the wrong result or something is broken and it really sort of just takes the patience to like not get frustrated and to really pay attention to detail because if one semicolon is out of place or you have one character off like the computer won't understand what you're trying to make it do computers are very dumb in that they can't figure out those sort of problems on their own but when you tell them what to do correctly they can do it incredibly fast and so it's so important for you as the programmer to have that really close paying attention to detail in that sense so as a programmer you really sort of have to be very careful and be very patient and as far as getting into the profession it's really sort of about working on your own and working on sort of personal projects and sort of trying to mix something that you're maybe passionate about outside of science and technology and trying to use programming or electrical engineering to sort of enhance something that you might think could be more efficient, right? So it's about sort of using computer science as a tool to improve life in some other way.
ትግስትና ከፍተኛ ጥንቃቄ ያስፈልጋል እዚህ ነገር ውስጥ ውጤታማ ለመሆን ብለሃል and then aside from that do you have any recommendations or suggestions as far as like tools or resources that you can think of that can help them, improve and then enhance what they're doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, there's the MIT Open Courseware. So those courses are a little bit more advanced, and they're like hour-long lecture formats and like homework that they actually give out at MIT. So there are other sort of, I guess, slower introductions to programming. So websites like Code Academy or like Khan Academy, Udacity. So there are lots of different resources.
All of them free?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so honestly, if you just Google like how to code or like coding lessons free, there's so many results. And like additionally, people can email me if they want to get more resources. I can
That would be fantastic.
point
If you're
them in the
willing,
right
we can,
direction.
you can put that, and then you can. I know you're gonna get a lot of emails, but good luck with that. But thank you so much for being willing for that. So while you were traveling there, even though you went there for assisting, your brothers out there and sisters, on a personal level, what was your experience? First of all, ይሄ የመጀመሪያ ጊዜ ነበር ስትሄድ? Was this your first time?
This was actually my third time.
So in general, whenever you travel to Ethiopia, what's your experience? The good, the bad, and the ugly, maybe? So.
I think one really sort of big thing for me about going back to Ethiopia that is sort of hard to wrap my head around is going to a place where everyone sort of looks like me and sort of being surrounded by my culture at home, but everywhere.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It's
Okay.
fantastic. It's such a surreal experience to be like born in the U.S. and Oregon, a place that's not incredibly diverse, and to go to Ethiopia and to be around all like my family members and just to be surrounded by other Ethiopians. Like I said, growing up, it's just me, my sister, and then my mom and my dad, and we have sort of extended like family, like the relatives, like just family friends, really.
Yeah.
But to actually go to Ethiopia and really be with like, oh, this is like my mom's brother and this is like my dad's sister and so on and so forth. It's really sort of an incredible experience for me. The most sort of powerful experience that I had was the first time I actually went to Ethiopia and when I actually got to the airport. So I was traveling there on my own. So it's just me, I had never been. And when I get to the airport, to basically see this like huge group of like probably 45 people all with like flowers like waiting for me to get back, that was really
You feel like a president?
Yeah. Yeah, it was just crazy just to like see all these people that I'd talked to or like seen pictures of, just to sort of have them like welcome me to Ethiopia for the first time. And that was like, we'd always like, family was a huge part of our like culture back home in Oregon. And to like actually like feel its like presence and have it like be tangible, it was really an incredible experience for me.
ከዚህ በኋላም ቶሎ መሄድ ታስባለህ ኢትዮጵያ for a personal purpose or for helping out, for teaching and everything? Do you have any plan, and how is it going to look like?
So my plan currently is to try to go to Ethiopia at least like once a year.
That's great.
Currently we're working on planning AddisCoder 2017, so I'll definitely be back for that. We're kind of just working, it's pretty early, but we're just sort of working out the details, and that'll be a pretty long process getting that through. But very excited about that, and just really excited to go back and see family and work on AddisCoder again.
That's awesome. So what's your hobby outside of work? ምንድን ነው ማድረግ የምትወደው ነገር?
So I really enjoy reading. For me, it's a way to sort of escape, and it's kind of, for me, it's a way to it's a way to wind down, but also kind of keep your mind sharp at the same time. It's like watching television, but more engaging. I really enjoy biographies. Like this year, I read the memoir of Barack Obama, Dreams from My Father, autobiography of Malcolm X, and the biography of Steve Jobs. So reading about like these really sort of important and like influencing people, and sort of trying to learn from their experiences and see like what they've done and try to incorporate different things into my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I'm going to give you a closing remark. So anything you want to say. This is an open question. You can say whatever. I'm not going to ask you to say what I want you to say, and perhaps close it with a little Amariña. So go ahead.
So if you're interested in technology, what I would just say is don't really be afraid to start or to reach out to people, because that's really the only way to learn anything. And in tech, in computer science specifically, there are so many resources online that if you have access to the internet, like you have a computer, there's really sort of nothing holding you back. I mean, it can be more difficult for some people than others, but if you really have the drive, it's possible. And so I would just say, really sort of follow your passions in that sense, and never be afraid to try or fail. Just go for it full-heartedly, because if there's anything that I learned from school or work or just growing up, is that it's really amazing what you can accomplish if you just give it 100% effort. በጣም አመሰግናለሁ. If anybody from back home is watching, I hope that you're proud.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, he said never be afraid to fail, right? ይሄ ነው ትልቁ ነገር። በተለይ በእኛ ካልቸር ውስጥ መሳሳት፣ መውደቅ፣ የሆነ ነገር መበላሸት እንፈራዋለን። አትፍሩ ብለዋል። በዛ ነው ውጤት የሚገኘው ብሏል። ማይክ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ ፈቃደኛ ሆነ እዚህ ድረስ መጥተህ life experience and your passion for computer science and programming ለማጫወት ከኛ ጋር ፈቃደኛ ስለሆንክ thank you በጣም
Thank you so much.
Thank you. ተመልካቾቻችን ከወጣት ማይክል ጋር ያደረኩት ጨዋታ ይሄን ይመስል ነበረ። ፈቃደኛ ሆኖ በዚህ ድረስ መጥቶ የህይወቱን ልምድና አንዳንድ ነገሮችን ለመጫወት ፈቃደኛ ሆኗል። ይቅርታ እንግዲህ በብዛት ኦልሞስት ሁሉን ነገር የተናገረው በእንግሊዝኛ ነው። ይሄ የሆነበት ምክንያት የአማርኛ መናገር ስለማይችል ነው። መስማቱ ላይም ያው የተወሰነ ስለሆነ እኔም አንዳንዱን በእንግሊዝኛ አንዳንዱን በአማርኛ ጉራማይ ላይ አድርጌ ጠይቄዋለሁ። ቅር እንደማትሰኝ ተስፋ አደርጋለሁ። የተናገራቸውን ብዙ በርካታ ቁም ነገሮች እንደቀሰማችሁ ለመርዳት እንደቻላችሁም ተስፋ አደርጋለሁ። ሳምንት በሌላ ፕሮግራም ጠብቃችሁ አስተያየቶቻችሁ እንደተለመደው ብታቀርቡልኝ ይደርሰኛል። በኢሜይል፣ በፌስቡክ ፔጅ፣ ዩቲዩብ ላይም እየሄዳችሁ የቻናሌ ላይ ያለፈውን ፕሮግራም መከታተል ትችላላችሁ። ሳምንት እስከምንገናኝ ቸር ሰንብቱ።